Welcome to the Archive Room podcast, stories of Manx life in years gone by, told by the people who were there.
Manx Radio.
Faster my, Judith Lay here, opening the door to the Archive Room. Manx Radio's treasure chest of stories of island life from years gone by, told by the people who were there. So come on in and prepare for a gentle stroll down Manx memory lane. When we left the Archive Room last week, I said that today we'd get our first taste of holiday making on the island and discover how tennis came in great style to Douglas. But first, let's meet up with ALFIE GILMOUR again, chatting with David Callister about his working life in the early 1900s at Todhunter and Elliot.
When I went to trade, first of all, of course, in Todhunter's shops, they're all pulled down now, the workshops and that, but they were quite happy days. It was hard work, lots of times, of course. We had lots of fun. There were 18 ironmongers in the front shop to start with, and a heyday when the hot and cold water system started on the promenade with the boarding houses. I can remember 27 plumbers working in, 6 or 8 blacksmiths and 1 electrician. It was a big firm those days. However, another story of Todhunters, when we used to go to the steam packet company many a time to bring stuff up from the warehouse to Todhunters, you see, from the steam packet warehouse. Donkey's years after, they were emptying for an alteration in the steam packet warehouse, emptied it all out, and they found a ladder there which had been posted, addressed to Todhunters 20 years previously from Slingsby's, and this ladder had been lying at the back of everything in the steam packet warehouse over 20 years, David. I don't know, did they ever claim for another one or not? I don't know, but that ladder was lying there for 20 years. Now then, also when we were working out in the town as an apprentice, I'll always remember working in Sartfell Roadhouses. Mr. Wade, Stanford Wade, his son eventually became a dental surgeon in Woodburn Road there, almost opposite top of Derby Road. However, he was getting some nice houses built in Sartfell Road by Creer Brothers, and they were happy days with Creer Brothers. They were good joiners and that, and happy gang. And the plasters in particular were the Miney family. There was Fred, Alan, and Dan, yes, that's right, Dan, and of course a labourer. And now Miney family were always interested in the Douglas Choral Union. And donkey's years previously, they used to, Fred Miney, old Fred Miney, he had a sister called Maggie. Mm-hmm. Now Maggie Miney was in the Choral Union as well, and she was always a leading lady. Now all day long, the Miney brothers and the old man, they'd be singing their songs which we were practising for the choral union. Yeah. And of course we'd join in, you see. There was many a time somebody was singing a wrong note. We were told off then, you know, or a handful of plaster thrown at us to shut up. But it was wonderful days to hear. I don't think there was a tenor among them. I think there were baritones, but they were real good voices, the Mineys. But they're singing their songs all day long. It was wonderful. And when the kids come out of school, all the kids, you know, from Westminster Terrace and Alexander Drive and Eleanor Drive and all the kids were all outside listening to these fellas singing. It was a concert for the kids. It was wonderful. It really was wonderful. Yes.
And they put the plaster on while they were singing?
While they were singing, they were working there, yes. And I tell you how tough, I hope there's some young men or even older men listening to this, try sometime putting a hod full of mortar on the mortar board.
Yeah.
And the mortar board was about 18 inches square. And hold it with one hand.
Yes.
Now, old Fred Miney could. The others couldn't, but old Fred Miney, he was really strong. Even a bucket of mortar. Lift a bucket of mortar up with one hand. Try it.
Yes.
And by Jove, he was tough, boy. He was really strong.
You weren't always with Todhunter and Elliot, though. You worked for the gas company as well, didn't you?
Yes, eventually, of course, there was work went very slack in Todd's, and you had winter work scheme, you see, before the war. When he got paid off on one job and there was nothing in the building trade, well, he went and looked for something else. And for a little while, I was down at Braddon Quarry with Mr. Knifton. He ran the quarry down there. And then, of course, I was on Douglas Head Marine Drive, And then I was lucky enough to get into the gas company. I was a lamplighter when I was in the gas company, because sometimes the gas company was slack as well, and they were very good to the employees of the gas company. They said, now, if there's nothing in the plumbing trade, will you go labouring? And I said, yes. This appertained to other fellows as well. And I said, yes, certainly. I don't want to get paid off, because I was a married man by this time, just before the war. And they give me a chance. He said, now, will you go lamplighting? And I said, yes. So, because there were lots of gas lamps around the town in those days, and they were on a pilot light. You pulled a lever for on and off, you see, at whatever the lamp lighting time was. Like lighting up time was perhaps 4 o'clock or 1:30, according to the light of the winter and summer. You lit them out at lighting up time, and you put them out at midnight.
How did you do that? Because they were tall lamps, weren't they?
Yes, well, you went around the push bike, and you had a piece of copper tube or a walking stick with a hook on the end of it, and you reached up, and the wire coming down from the bottom of the lamp was only about a foot long, but it was long enough to pull the lamp on or off, whichever it was, and lit by pilot light, you see.
Yeah.
And of course, there was one place in particular where it was funny. Shaw's Brow and all the old houses were still intact those days, pre-war. There was nothing pulled down. And I used to go over Myrtle Street, and there was a couple in Myrtle Street, then into Shaw's Brow. There was 2 or 3 in Shaw's Brow, and then you went down the steps to Hanover Street. Now then, on the way down the steps, you got to a lamp on the bracket on the wall outside an old boy's window. And this old boy, Mr. Jones, Natty Jones, as he was, poor man, I eventually discovered, he was crippled and lying in bed most of the time. Well, of course, I didn't know that. And of course, I put the lamp out at midnight. And when I got into Hanover Street, I looked back, and the lamp was relit. So I thought, well, I wonder what's gone wrong. So I went back up. It might be a slack lever, the balance has gone wrong. So I went back up and I put the light out again. And believe me, when I put that light out, I was met with that tirade of foul language. To leave that so lamp lit. You see, I thought, what's this at all? You see, he said, leave the lamp lit. So I went. The following morning, I says to Tommy Cray, the foreman plumber, about this bracket. Oh, he said, I forgot to tell you. Natty Jones, he says, he lies in bed and he reads by the lamp light, and when he's finished with the light, he'll put it out. And
so he used to reach out the window?
Yes, Natty Jones used to reach out through the broken window with a walking stick and put the light out, and that was all right. So I had no need to light or put out that lamp in future. He put it on when it was convenient for himself. Of course, in the gas company, lots of times, when you went in gas company first thing in the morning, 7:30 start or whatever it was, the lads from the retort house were in having breakfast or a cup of tea or a good meal, you see. Now, they had what you call a communal frying pan, big frying pan. Some fellows would have an egg, bacon on it, others sausages, other fellows liver and onions or whatever it was. If you'd have seen that frying pan, David, you'd have laughed. And I never got washed. And this frying pan was about 4 or 5 blokes all sitting at one table, and what they put in the frying pan to get cooked, they just take it out while the frying pan was in the middle of the table, you see. Yeah. No hygiene whatever. No hygiene whatever. And there was an old boy there by the name of Freddie Sweetman, and his son was Freddie as well. And they used to share one another's breakfast. And this particular morning, young Freddie Sweetman says to his dad, "By Jove, Dad," he says, "the liver is tough this morning. What? There's nothing wrong with the liver, boy," he says. And he's doing his best to cut through the liver as well, but we had to stop him because somebody had put a Phillips sticker sole on the frying pan. He thought it was his liver. We had to stop him from eating it. Another morning, old Freddie, the same thing. He said, have a cup of tea. So somebody refused a cup of tea because we knew what was on. And young Freddie says, "There's something wrong with the tea, Dad, this morning." He says, the old man says, "There's always something wrong with something with you." He said, "What the hell's wrong with the tea this morning?" He said, "Well, it's funny. We had to stop him from drinking it because somebody had put lemonade crystals in it." Oh, happy days. Also in the coke yard, there were tons and tons, dozens of tons of coke going out every day. And the lads, sometimes they would bring bits and pieces of sweets and that back from restaurants or sweet shops and cafes they'd been. And this particular day, I don't know who it was that said to one of the drivers, "Now bring something back with you. You haven't brought anything back for weeks." "Right, oh," says this driver. I won't mention his name, but he was a character. So just before dinner, he'd been to different restaurants in town, and you'll never guess what this fella brought back. A wooden tray with 24 meat pies on it, and we were eating meat pies all day. We wouldn't dare say where you got them from.
So he'd whip them, I think.
Well, he'd whip them on the way out. Yes, he covered the tray with a sack, an empty sack, and brought it out. Another day, a chap said, "Now it's your turn to bring something back today," and you'll never guess what this fella brought back. He brought a sack with hot pot in. Now this sack was a paper bag, actually, with multi-layers paper bag, and he cut it in two, crossed through the middle, and he must have put about a bucket full of hot pot in this bag, and he brought it back, and everybody in the courtyard was eating hot pot out of a bag.
Clearly no shortage of fun captured in those great memories from ALFIE GILMOUR. At the age of 92, retired teacher KATHERINE COWIN became a published author, and we join her now in conversation with David Callister about writing Alice's story, which is actually the story of both KATHERINE COWIN's parents, Alice and Robert. We begin with KATHERINE reading an extract from the book where she describes her father Robert's plan for a grand tennis facility in Douglas, in the area of Alexander Drive.
Tennis was becoming a word to conjure with. Across the unnamed road, Robert had secured an area even bigger in size than his original holding. With proper management, Robert reckoned that a tennis area suitably set out to appeal to players and spectators would be a very fair commercial and fashionable venture. A high stone wall surrounded the area to ensure privacy. Trees and rare shrubs masked the harsh stone of the high walls. Here fig trees, there blazing cherry trees. Close-trimmed box hedges and golden hues separated the several service courts, making the strong netting more decorative. In the centre of the whole area was erected a type of a mound from where everything was visible. This mound was furnished with wooden seats, solid but easily manageable. In the far corner of the whole area stood a picturesque bungalow for the manager. On the opposite side, away from the spectators, stood the stable for the two ponies that grazed in the field beyond the high stone wall, stretching to Selborne Road. By the stable stood the shed which housed the trap. There were sheds for the bins of grain, and nearby were storehouses of equipment for tennis and croquet, together with the storage of chairs for spectators sitting. All Saints, the local church, was on the opposite side of Alexander Drive. It was a pleasant area.
The tennis ground was an excellent idea, excellently prepared and well set up, with an honest manager. All boded well. The idea was well received. Just a reading from Alice's story by KATHERINE COWIN. Now, tennis in that area led to the creation of a road itself, didn't it? Tennis Road.
It had no name before the tennis ground was opened.
And Robert was your father.
Yes.
He decided he wanted to buy that area and create a tennis court.
He'd already bought it when he had to sell off to Corona, the house in the corner of Albany Road. He had to sell off the apple orchard that he had already bought and set up. And he thought that if he made a tennis ground in this other area that he'd bought, that would make up for having lost part of his original purchase.
You've got a remarkable recollection of all these events and the people and the characters.
They are honest recollections, yes. They're not absolutely exact sometimes, of course.
Now, you've put a lot of dialogue in, which obviously you've had to invent a little bit of that to give it narrative, have you?
I've always been keen on drama, and in my mind, I fancy this book is a lot of dramatic interludes.
One of the chapters in Alice's story is entitled The School, and having been a school teacher, obviously you've been able to put a lot of character into this, a lot of feeling into it, and you've got a tremendous atmosphere out of that old school. Were those the sort of conditions in which you went to school, in those rather perhaps primitive classrooms?
Oh no, no, I started off at a dame school in Woodland Square. And That was very, hot milk in the middle of the morning.
Oh, right.
And so on.
But the school you described there was quite
It was
primitive and basic, wasn't
Oh,
it?
very, very bleak. It was the poorer part of the town, of course. The vicar's child started there, for example,
Because it was a church school, in fact.
because it was a church school. And as soon as she was old enough, she was transferred to another school.
How long has it taken you to write the story then?
A long time.
So you've been doing a little over the years, have you?
Oh, yes, I have. I think really it's a study of characters rather than a study of...
Of the social history and so
Yes.
on. Yes. You've livened it up by putting the characters in,
Yes.
putting words in their mouth. I mean, you take it to the point where your mother dies. Now, are you going to work on from there or not? Are you thinking of a second volume?
No. What I was thinking of was, I started actually. 2 old ladies from the mainland came to live in the island. And my brother and I are very lacking in respect. And we called them Gog and Magog. I have no idea what Gog and Magog is. But one was very tall and fat and stately, and she was a charming old lady. The other was like a mosquito. Through them, we got to know the doctor who came from Austria. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name now.
Well, the story of Gog and Magog and the doctor who came from Austria was sadly not to be told by 92-year-old author Katherine Cowan, who is still fondly remembered by many who were taught by her. The first day of September is supposed to be the first day of autumn, but I really want to hold on to a bit more summertime, and how better to do it than to share some of the wonderful stories of holiday making on the island. Victor Knheale was born in 1918 at number 5 Myrtle Street, one of a row of 11 houses opposite St Mary's Roman Catholic Church, here in the heart of Douglas. Let's listen now as he shares his story with David Callister.
Well, in the summertime, most of the houses took visitors in. You could never be sure how many visitors were going to arrive. It was the same people that seemed to come year after year in the same weeks when the various wakes were on, and the majority come from Lancashire or from Scotland, and they become more like friends than visitors. But the work involved by your parents running these places, because most of the visitors would buy their own food and bring it in. They would have a cupboard each. Your father would be cooking this for them.
Yes.
We took people in. Sunday was always the day when they all had a sit-down meal, and it was a communal effort then. Half a crown a meal,
Yes.
and maybe a tuppence for the condiments. We as kids, our job would be peeling the potatoes and shelling the peas, because you bought the peas by the peck in those days, which was like a great big can, and they filled this up, and you would be there on a Saturday peeling these ready for the Sunday's dinner. Another job we had was cleaning the candlesticks, making sure there was no loose wax on them, and they would be put out on the table for the visitors going to bed, and that was it. No hot and cold water in those days either. There was just jugs of water in all the bedrooms, so it was a Spartan existence for them because it was cold water. There was one toilet in the house, and that was in the backyard, and it was like a big thunderbox. It was a big box with a wooden lid on.
Was it a dry toilet then?
No, it was a
Flush toilet?
flush toilet,
Yeah.
but it was in a little room in the yard,
Yeah.
and there'd be a space at the top of the door and holes bored in the bottom so to allow ventilation. No bathrooms in those days. The house, it had 2 floors. You went up the first flight of stairs, and there was an outlet straight ahead. There was 2 small bedrooms. You had to go through one to get to the other. Then on the next floor there was 3 bedrooms, one going at the back of the house and one which had obviously, when the house had been built, had been one room, and probably was the drawing room then. And then there was 3 attics. In the attics, the only lighting was from skylights. And when the visitors would come, at the beginning when there was only a few, we would be up in the attic sleeping. And in the summer, it was mighty hot up there under the eaves.
So who would go up there? Would your mother and father go as well?
We'd all go up.
And who else was in the family beside you then?
It was my brother and I.
Yes.
We did have a sister, but she died when she was 2.5.
So in the attic you all went then?
All up there. But when there was more and more people arrived, and one occasion there was 2 girls had booked, and 5 of them turned up, and of course there was no really room for them. But they were decided they could sleep. There was a big bed there. They could sleep across the bed instead of lengthways.
Yes.
And by this time, we were on a mattress down in the kitchen, so the living room. And that was the way that most people did. They had to make their money in a few short weeks. And when you think of the few shillings they charged the people in those days, it was virtually just enough to pay the bills and maybe buy you some new clothes at the end of the summer.
Yes. So there was no big profits made in that.
No.
But there were other benefits from holiday time on the island which can never be measured in pounds, shillings and pence.
The things you remember about this summer was how happy everybody was. They didn't have much money when these people would come on their holidays, but they would always be well dressed. The girls would be dressed in nice cotton dresses, or I think it was called Macclesfield silk. And the boys, one of the favourite things in the 20s was the Oxford bags. This is the trousers with the very, very wide bottoms.
Yes.
But everybody seemed to be well dressed. And there was no question of relying on the pubs for their entertainment. They seemed to be able to make their entertainment. And the number of people that be going around the streets singing, be banjos and ukuleles and real big groups of young people really enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
And going down the promenade, they would be linked up right across the promenade pavements and going along happy. But the girls always seemed to bring among their kit a dance dress.
Yes.
And the dance halls was great. There was a whole string of them from Derby Castle, the Palace, Villa Marina, Pally Dance in Strand Street.
Yeah.
And you'd see them dancing. There would be 4,000 people at the Palace Ballroom. And of course the fellow that was in charge there, the Master of Ceremonies, patrolling up and down the centre of the dance hall, making sure that people kept on going round anti-clockwise. And it was just like looking at a river moving to see them all going. And they would be singing to the music as well, singing softly to the music. They were absolutely great days.
And at the same time, next week, we'll be revisiting some more great days in the company of the people who lived at that time. Thank you to this week's storytellers, ALFIE GILMOUR, KATHERINE COWIN and Victor KNEALE. And of course our thanks to the late David Callister, who first gathered together all these wonderful stories, and to Manx Radio's present-day archivist, Tim Price, for all his help. In the archive room next week, we'll be playing out in the streets with the children, discovering what was on Head Road long before Manx Radio arrived here, and there's more parrot stories. So do please join me just after 6 next Thursday evening for more treasures from the archive room, or listen at your leisure to the podcasts of this series. Go to manxradio.com and search for The Vault. There you'll find all the available episodes of the archive room and lots more from the Manx Radio Store of Nostalgia. But for now, this is Judith saying thank you for listening. And, well, who is this voice in our vintage sign-off?
Anyway, till next week, so long, yes, sir.